Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
I mean, it's almost as if we've reached the apotheosis of modern politics and media with last night's debate between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. It's this appallingly difficult attempt to be impartial that has inflicted madness upon both sides of the Atlantic in recent years. Because if someone's a racist liar, how do you do impartiality? I mean, what do? Here's a racist liar, okay, and here is, well, someone who isn't a right. How can you have impartial? How do you actually do this when you have somebody who is probably a psychopath, clearly massively dishonest and deluded, and a deeply flawed man? How do you do impartiality? America struggles because the votes are breaking down almost 50-50 at the moment. And yet on one side, you've got a woman who is far from perfect, but at least she's human in the meaningful sense of the word. You know, the relationship between her brain and her mouth is what you would recognize as being common to our species. And then you've got this orange fella on the other side who's as mad as a box of frogs. But people like it. And I've worked out why. That's your starter for 10 this morning. You're going to be absolutely delighted to hear that I have unravelled the riddle of Donald Trump. And of course, this sort of demagogue populism that's popular right across the world at the moment. And it's taken me ages to work it out because it's so confusing. But it's really simple once you break it down. It's really simple. And this is why people like Donald Trump. It's because they're right-wing. That's not the prize yet, obviously. Why, James? What do you mean? Well, just think about it. All of the things, when we've tried to work out in the past, what is it that these people are so upset about? What is it that they're so cross about? What is it that they think Donald Trump somehow represents? And then think about what it is that they're cross about. It's all self-inflicted because they're right-wing. So if they're feeling squeezed at work, they voted against trade union power. They're feeling underpaid. They voted for rich people not to pay more tax. If they're feeling exploited in the workplace or insecure, they vote against workplace protection. They vote against legislation designed to protect workers. Why? Because they've been persuaded to do so by right-wing media now for the best part of 3 decades. So and then they cite Ronald Reagan as a hero. That was the point where the penny dropped for me, when Trump starts talking about doing things that Reagan did. Reagan and Thatcher, between them, took away anything that in the post-war period of Western politics could be loosely described as workers' rights. Not completely. They just started chipping away. And it's all gone. So you look now at a world where the bosses absolutely rule. Donald Trump, despite being a boss, comes along and offers you, this is where the racism comes in, and it's perfect. He comes along and offers you an opportunity to blame someone else. So all of these people, whether it is your sort of British equivalents on the UKIP side of politics, or whether it's your Trumpies in America, all of these people have dug their own hole by dint of supporting right-wing policies, despite being actually protected by, quotes, left-wing traditions. Workers who don't get paid enough, workers who don't get protected at work enough, workers who see their jobs move overseas because of free market and free trade. All of these people actually needed a strong state to protect them from globalization, call it what you will. But because they're right-wing, they can't turn around and say, oh my God, it's all self-inflicted. Oh my God, we've been punching ourselves in the face for 30 years. So what do they have to do instead? What does Donald Trump do? What do all racist liars do? Give them someone else to blame. And that's where the racism comes in. It's all the fault of black people. It's all the fault of benefits. Black people on benefits, or Muslims. It's all the fault of that. Mexicans, they're all rapists and murder. The reason why your life is rubbish is not because of all the things you've voted for yourself to make your life rubbish, the restrictions on workplace protection, the dilution of trade union power, the simple notion of a worker enjoying job security. You voted against all of that. Taxes, we don't want high taxes for rich people. We want to reduce taxes. He's saying it on the podium still. We're going to reduce taxes for rich people. And they're all cheering. Why? Because they can't admit they've dug their own hole. What does Donald Trump do? He comes along and gives them Mexican rapists and murderers. He gives them Muslim terrorists. He gives them black, work-shy people who deserve to get shot. That's it. It's that simple, isn't it? Because they're right-wing. So they can't admit, you can't admit that you voted for all of these. Look at this country. How many of the people who would describe themselves as Thatcherites? Yeah, I really like working class Tories. I really like Margaret Thatcher. She did great for this country. How are you feeling today? How well off are you? How are things going for you? You safe at work? You protected at work? You got rights at work? You got collective bargaining at work? Have you? No, I've got none of that. Got none of that. Oh, actually, I voted to get rid of it because I love Margaret Thatcher. And how's life working out for you? Well, it's a bit rubbish, to be honest with you. I'm insecure. I can't really afford to keep the wolf from the door. God knows how my children are ever going to be able to do better than me. And yeah, but you voted for all this stuff. Yeah, I know. I'm not going to admit that in public, though. Can I blame immigrants? Yeah, of course you can, mate. Of course you can. Blame immigrants. You're poor because of immigrants. And that's it. That's it, isn't it? That's it. That's what we're looking at. Which is precisely why, when I say to you now, how can anybody not realise just how mad, dishonest and disgraceful Donald Trump is? The answer is really, really simple. Because he's all I've got. He's all I've got. He's all that there is between me and the realisation that I have been punching myself in the face for the best part of 30 years. When I vote for low taxation for rich people in the forlorn and misplaced hope that I might be a rich person one day, I punch myself in the face. When I'm persuaded that trade unions are bad and industrial action is bad, I'm doing the business of the bosses. I'm towing the party line of the billionaires. I've been punching myself in the face for the last 30 or 40 years. I don't have a lifestyle that my own parents had. Why not? Because I voted to get rid of it. I voted to dismantle it. I waved sayonara to the people who argued that we should actually have state intervention to protect ordinary people and ordinary workers. So how can anybody not see how mad and dangerous Donald Trump is? Answer, he's the only thing standing between them and the mirror. And they don't want to look in that mirror. And that, I think, is 21st century politics for you in a nutshell. So all of this confusion about the demagogue's appeal, all of this notion that a racist liar somehow will be found out. Of course he's not going to get found out in the end, any more than our equivalent gets found out. You stand up and tell people that they can blame their lives on some faceless horde of foreigners, they will bite your arm off if, deep down, they know it's their fault. And that's why the lefties get so frustrated, because the lefties are standing on the other side, righties, the people who can see Donald Trump for the chuntering lunatic that he clearly is, don't feel personally responsible for the mess that the world, if you like, has become, or for the mess that the societies we're discussing has become. They might be suffering economically just as much as the people cheering Donald Trump, but they know it isn't their fault. Because they believe in things like strong government, they believe in things like trade unions, and they believe in things like protection for workers. Why would a poor person who's being exploited at work be attracted to a politician who calls for bosses to pay less tax? Why on earth would you do that? Or who talks about the forces of globalization in the way that Donald Trump does? There's only one possible answer to that question. Because the alternatives are too terrible to contemplate. And that, I think, is why the election could still go either way, despite the fact that to any objective analysis at all, Hillary Clinton wiped the floor with Donald Trump. In fact, I don't even know if Hillary Clinton wiped the floor with Donald Trump last night. When you have a candidate standing up in public in front of 100 million people and saying stuff like this, you almost don't need an opponent.
And the worst part of what we've heard Donald say has been about nuclear weapons. He has said repeatedly that he didn't care if other nations got nuclear weapons, Japan, South Korea, even Saudi Arabia. It has been the policy of the United States, Democrats and Republicans, to do everything we could to reduce the proliferation of nuclear weapons. He even said, well, if there were a nuclear war in the East Asia, well, that's fine. Have a good time, folks. And in fact, his cavalier attitude about nuclear weapons is so deeply troubling. That is the number one threat we face in the world, and it becomes particularly threatening if terrorists ever get their hands on any nuclear material. So a man who can be provoked by a tweet should not have his fingers anywhere near the nuclear codes, as far as I think anyone with any sense about this should be concerned.
That line's getting a little bit old, I must say. Listen,
it's a good one, though.
I would like to,
well describes the problem.
It's not an accurate one at all. It's not an accurate one.
You don't need to. You don't need to analyse this in any sophisticated or meaningful sense, because, I mean, it's just true. Donald Trump bristles like a baby spitting his tummy out almost at every corner in this thing. And you sit there trying to be all clever and trying to be all objective, and you're trying to, how can anybody not see what this man is? And the answer is simple. He's given me a chance to blame someone other than myself for my life. And if you're right-wing, that's an irresistible invitation. Why aren't you getting paid enough? Why can't you make ends meet? Why are you feeling so squeezed at work? Why do you feel exploited? Why haven't you got job security? Why haven't you got the right to strike? Why haven't you got this? Why haven't you got that? Why haven't you got this? Why haven't you got that? Well, I voted for Reagan and Bush. I did it. Well, so you wanted to go to these wars that you're now saying were a terrible... Yeah, I was. I'm right-wing. I'm a Republican. I voted for all of this stuff. Well, it's your fault then, isn't it? Yeah, I think it is. Would you like me to stand up and blame the Mexicans? Oh, would you please, Mr. Trump? Okay, they're all rapists and murderers. And then he talks and does himself even more damage.
This year, Secretary Clinton became the first woman nominated for president by a major party. Earlier this month, you said she doesn't have, quote, a presidential look. She's standing here right now. What did you mean by that?
She doesn't have the look. She doesn't have the stamina. I said she doesn't have the stamina. And I don't believe she does have the stamina. To be president of this country, you need tremendous stamina.
The quote was, I just don't think she has a presidential look. Wait a minute, Leslie, you asked me a question. Did you ask me a question? You have to be able to negotiate our trade deals. You have to be able to negotiate, that's right, with Japan, with Saudi Arabia. I mean, can you imagine we're defending Saudi Arabia, and with all of the money they have, we're defending them and they're not paying? All you have to do is speak to them. Wait, you have so many different things you have to be able to do, and I don't believe that Hillary has the stamina. Let's let her respond.
Well, as soon as he travels to 112 countries and negotiates a peace deal, a ceasefire, a release of dissidents, an opening of new opportunities in nations around the world, or even spends 11 hours testifying in front of a congressional committee, he can talk to me about stamina.
The world, let me tell you.
She's killed him, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because he's not offering policy. He's not offering rational, meaningful, sensible things. He's offering excuses and scapegoats. And he could still win. He could easily win. Just, you think I'm exaggerating? This is, I could tell you, every technological journalist or every tech expert you know will confirm that this is undiluted gibberish. Absolute gibberish, okay? This bit here.
We came in with the internet, we came up with the internet, and I think Secretary Clinton and myself would agree very much. When you look at what ISIS is doing with the internet, they're beating us at our own game. ISIS. So we have to get very, very tough on cyber and cyber warfare. It is a huge problem. I have a son. He's 10 years old. He has computers. He is so good with these computers. It's unbelievable. The security aspect of cyber is very, very tough, and maybe it's hardly doable. But I will say we are not doing the job we should be doing. But that's true throughout our whole governmental society. We have so many things that we have to do better, Lester, and certainly cyber is one of them.
You can't, in all conscience, listen to that and conclude anything other than the man's gibbering. He's a gibbering idiot. He's absolutely out to lunch. But of course, you can't admit that if he's all that stands between you and the realization that you have been voting to punch yourself in the face for the last 30 years. This global market, this world that we've created, was not created by people on the left. It was created by people on the right. The wars, the economy, stupid, all of these things, low taxes for rich people, they voted for all of it. The chickens have come home to roost, and the man who says we can blame the Mexicans and fix it all by building a big wall becomes irresistible. Okay, you are now invited to pick apart that analysis, but I got to tell you, I'm about to say I'm profoundly impressed by my own analysis of the politics. It's not that, I'm just relieved. I'm so relieved that I finally get it. Because you sit here for hours, you think they can't all be racist. All these people can't actually be bigoted. They can't all be Ku Klux Klan men. They're not. They're just normal, frightened, disappointed people who can't quite accept that it's their own fault they are where they are. because they were persuaded by the billionaires that own the television stations and the newspapers, the Rupert Murdochs and the Fox Newses. They've been persuaded for a couple of decades to do these things. Every morning you turn on Rush Limbaugh and he is encouraging you to punch yourself in the face, and they're lapping it up all the time. I'm so relieved that it finally makes sense. If it's your fault you're in a hole, you've got two choices. You either stop digging and realise you can't climb out, or you beg for someone to come along and claim that someone else dug the hole. Donald Trump is the mother of all excuse givers, the mother of all scapegoaters. Half of America is desperately looking for somebody other than themselves to blame. Which half? The right-wing half. 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. Don't pull it apart too quickly, because I'm enjoying the warm glow of relief at the moment, and I don't want you to pull it away like a cheap suit at the first attempt. But of course, if you have to, then you have to. And the sense of relief in the studio is palpable. You stare and stare and stare and stare at something in the desperate hope that it will finally begin to make sense to you. And for me, last night it did. The simple reason why the right wing of America is persuaded by Donald Trump's lunatic rhetoric, genuinely lunatic. I'll play that thing again about ISIS. Remember, these are the things he's prepared in advance. ISIS is a hit for him. He's strong on ISIS. He's strong on security. And he starts talking about his 10-year-old boy being good with computers. And yet people come away from that encounter still thinking, yeah, he'd be a good president. Why? Because the alternative is too terrifying to contemplate. The alternative is your life's rubbish because you voted Republican. Your life's rubbish because you've been persuaded to be right-wing. I will never get tired of listening to this clip. This is for me, it's just incredible. And yet, the numbers won't shift much after last night's debate because Trump gives people an excuse.
When you look at what ISIS is doing with the internet, they're beating us at our own game. ISIS. So we have to get very, very tough on cyber and cyber warfare. It is a huge problem. I have a son. He's 10 years old. He has computers. He is so good with these computers. It's unbelievable. The security aspect of cyber is very, very tough. And maybe it's hardly doable.
Maybe it's hardly doable. What does it even mean? Doesn't matter, James. It's the Mexicans. It doesn't matter, James. It's immigration. It doesn't matter, James. It's the media and the global. It doesn't matter what he means. He's just hitting the buttons that I need him to hit in order to avoid the conclusion that I have been voting against my own interests for most of my adult life. And there you have it. Brexit, Trump, in a nutshell. She's saying Russia, Russia, Russia. Maybe it was. It could also be China. It could be someone sitting on their bed that weighs 400 pounds. You don't know who broke into DNC, but what did we learn? We learned that Bernie Sanders was taken advantage of by your people, by Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Can you translate that? Anyone? Beulah? Anyone? Another one, look what happened to her, but Bernie Sanders was taken advantage of. Now, whether that was Russia, whether that was China, whether it was another country, we don't know, because the truth is, under President Obama, we've lost control of things that we used to have control over. We came in with an internet. We came up with the internet. Tim Berners-Lee, of course, working at CERN in Switzerland, came up with the internet. That's what facts are. Yeah, we came up with the internet, and that black man in the White House has ruined it for us. Racist lies. So appealing throughout history. Whenever things are bad, racist lies. Do you know that they tried to blame the Great Fire of London on Dutch immigrants? Did you know that? I'm just reading about it. Lynch mobs touring the streets of London after the Great Fire looking for Dutchmen to string up. It always works. Throughout history, and why it's taken so long for the penny to drop, God only knows. Alan is in Mildenhall, RAF country. What would you like to say, Alan?
Yes, first I just want to say you're throwing in a lot of hyperbole in your speeches, and what
I should be more like Donald Trump, shouldn't I?
No, I'm not saying to be like anybody, but my point is that with the left and the right, you're going on about how Donald Trump.
I know what I said, Alan. Tell me what you rang in to say.
Well, the point is that the Conservative Party in America isn't blaming anything on the Mexicans, isn't blaming anything on any other race. What they're blaming it on, and the problems in America, is that the government is wasting our money.
Well, we're talking about Donald Trump and his comments about Mexicans, about immigrants, about Muslims, all of these things, about the appeal of Donald Trump.
I understand that.
Yes.
I understand that, but Donald Trump is not talking about cutting taxes on the rich on their income.
He said last night that he'd cut corporation tax from 35% to 15%.
Yes, corporation tax. And corporation tax is not income tax.
No one mentioned income tax. That's the tax businesses pay to the state.
No, I understand that, but corporation tax is what...
He's also said he wants to cut income tax.
No, he did not say that, actually.
Not last night, but he has said that previously.
No, he did not. He said he wants to cut corporation tax because in America, we have the highest corporation tax of one of the highest in the world for a developed nation. And that's a problem when you have jobs that are being shipped overseas because of that. And when you say that, like I'm a conservative, okay, and I'm very well off.
What did you think of him saying, hang on a minute, when he said he didn't pay it, the only 2 years of tax returns that we've seen of his, he didn't pay any federal income tax. Hang on, Alan, you don't know what question I'm going to ask. He boasted about not paying it. He said he didn't pay any federal income tax because he was very smart. How does that help American workers?
Okay, and now listen to my point.
No, it's a question, Alan. How does that help American workers?
Okay. I'm gonna answer your question, but I'm also going to pose a question to you too.
Oh.
Okay, the reason it helps American workers, is because he understands the tax system is flawed.
Okay.
And he knows as a businessman that there's loopholes. Just like in America, we have welfare. There is loopholes that allow people to get welfare.
So him not paying taxes helps American workers because he understands loopholes.
Let me finish my point, though.
Of course, absolutely.
Okay. My point is that if the system is there that allows you to take advantage of it, are you as a businessman going to say, I don't want that tax break? When I'm doing my taxes every year, I don't say I don't want that tax break. I take every tax break I can when I can because the system is there. It's not Donald Trump's the problem. It's the system is the problem.
And he's going to fix it, is he?
No, he is going to fix it.
So he's going to make people pay more tax.
But wait,
by cutting it from 35 to 15 because he's smart.
No.
Yes.
We're talking about corporate tax. We're talking about corporate tax. You're not talking about income. And you're not talking about income tax, and you're not talking about dividend tax either. It's a totally different thing. When you're talking about corporate tax is specifically the money that businesses make that reinvest. That's a business entity. That is not a personal entity. So they take that money. I'm just going to give you one more chance to tell me why it's good for American workers for a billionaire not to pay income tax. Again, you're speaking points. You're using hyperbole.
I'm using hyperbole. Listen to this guy. Listen to this guy, and then we'll talk. No, hang on, Alan. We'll just listen to this guy talking about ISIS. Then we'll come back and talk about hyperbole. Actually, no. You can translate this for us. Let's listen to this. What does this mean?
When you look at what ISIS is doing with the internet, they're beating us at our own game. ISIS. So we have to get very, very tough on cyber and cyber warfare. It is a huge problem. I have a son. He's 10 years old. He has computers. He is so good with these computers. It's unbelievable. The security aspect of cyber is very, very tough, and maybe it's hardly doable.
What does that mean?
Okay, what it means is that
you're really going to have a go.
Okay, no, let me finish.
Please,
okay,
yes,
because when you interrupt me, it does not allow me to prove.
I was kind of giving you a charitable opportunity to withdraw, but you crack on.
No, I'm not. I don't need to withdraw because the point is that in the United States, our security is flawed when it comes to cybersecurity. And he's saying that his son is very good with computer. He's trying to compare and making a contrast, saying, "Hey, look, my son's already very good with computers, and my son apparently so good with computers that he probably didn't get to the point, but he could himself maybe even hack into something. But we need to improve our security, which Hillary Clinton is not going to be good at, because you can see that she in herself has no idea.
Did you just say he didn't actually make the point, but you think he might have been saying this while trying to explain to me what he was saying?
Actually, I did not say that. You can play the bit over. I did not say that. I said he did not get to the point.
So what was the point he didn't get to? That his son could fix cyber?
No, that's not what I said. I was making the point that his son, he's making a point with millennials, that millennials are very good with computers, and that because of ISIS and that they're getting, in the computer world, that they're able to go and hack in very easily in the American system because we're lacking in cybersecurity, that we need to improve on that.
Okay, and the 10-year-old would do what in that process? How is he?
No, he's not saying this 10-year-old's going to do something. He's just making a point.
Why did he mention his 10-year-old, do you think?
Because he mentioned his 10-year-old because they are good with computers, and saying that you're not really listening.
He was talking about ISIS. He was talking about ISIS, and he mentioned his 10-year-old son. Let's listen to another bit. You can translate another. Just pick it at random. I don't care.
You have so many different things you have to be able to do, and I don't believe that Hillary has the stamina.
As soon as he travels to 112 countries and negotiates a peace deal, a ceasefire, release of dissidents, an opening of new opportunities in nations around the world, or even spends 11 hours testifying in front of a congressional committee, he can talk to me about stamina.
The world...
When he said you have so many different things that you have to do, what was he talking about?
He's, honestly, at that point, it really has nothing to do with presidential debate so far as with the policy issues.
Yeah, what was he talking about, Anna?
It doesn't mean anything.
What was he talking about?
Bring up a policy issue. That doesn't matter.
Okay, I'm late for the news. It's been an absolute pleasure and privilege talking to you, sir. It's 10:31. Finally, the penny has dropped. How can people watch that debate last night and not see Donald Trump for the chuntering lunatic that he clearly is, the narcissistic sociopath, the racist liar? I don't think he is actually racist. I think he's just very good at pulling in the people that want to hear some racism in order to excuse their own existence. And I feel sorry for those people. In the same way I feel sorry for anybody who's been persuaded over the last 30 years to vote against their own economic interests. So the rich get richer and the rest of us either stayed the same or got poorer. Why? Well, if you voted for that, you couldn't possibly want to admit it was your fault. The guy comes along, blames it all on immigration and Mexicans. Yeah, of course you're going to love it. And that is why the racist liar meme, the racist liar demagoguery, always throughout history comes back to the forefront, comes back up the pipe, as it were, when times are tough. And since 2008, they have been tough. We've seen it in this country, we've seen it in America. I've spent the best part of a year trying to unravel this. It was always so simple. Always so simple. And why is he popular? Why does he still get these numbers? Because the Republicans have voted election after election after election to create precisely the circumstances which have rendered their own lives worse than their parents. Can't blame their parents, can't blame themselves, can't blame their party. Blame Mexicans, blame immigrants, blame foreigners. And I spoke to an American congressman last week about the riots in Charlotte, and he actually said, and he's gone a bit viral on both sides of the Atlantic, he actually said the reason why black people riot after the police kill a black person is because they're jealous of white people. And he's still in a job. It's great. You can understand. Of course people are going to vote for him. Yeah, that's why we got problems. It's all their fault. All their fault. Nothing to do with me. And that's why he could still win. Easily. David's in Liverpool. David, what would you like to say?
Yeah, good morning, James. Yeah, I thought before this debate, I thought these three debates would prove what an idiot he is, but it won't take three. It's just taken one. I mean, he was absolutely useless, and it was all sound bites. He kept saying, I want to make America great again.
But that's what people want to hear. I mean, you might not have been impressed by it, but if you were desperately trying to convince yourself it wasn't your fault your life was rubbish, you'd bite his arm off.
Yeah, I mean, she talked about, when he talked about Iraq and ISIS, and as she said, she mentioned about Bush taking the country into Iraq, and she said Bush made that agreement, and she said we had to have an agreement with the Iraqi government whether we could leave troops can remain there, and they said no. He doesn't understand. He doesn't understand politics. He's a businessman, and he's failed. He's been made 3 or 4 times now.
But you heard the first caller. You heard the first. Here is a man who boasts about not paying income tax. Actually boasts about it and won't publish his tax returns because he lies about his own financial situation, and he doesn't want the American people to see that he's A, got nothing like the money that he claims he's got, and B, pays nothing like the sort of tax that he should be paying. And you can actually present that as a strength. It shows he's a great business. You heard him. You heard the guy. That's the votes right there. Doesn't matter how many times you hold up a fact. They're going to come back at you with a feeling that he's on their side. It's good that he doesn't pay tax, hey?
I mean, it's just, with fiscal policy, in government,
he's claimed he had a defective microphone as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a joke. 4 times, bankrupt, thousands.
But it doesn't know it's not a joke because his people will believe it. The followers, the Kool-Aid swallowers, will say they did rig his microphone. They did rig it. It's the fault of the microphone that he said such stupid things.
It's like a debate a while ago, a few years ago, when they thought Bush had this earpiece and he was being fed all this information. But it's in an hour and a half, it just proved how ridiculous the man is, and I thought she was very good in the sense
she's all right. She's a far from sparkling candidate. Compared to him, she's a flipping genius, but compared to previous incumbents and previous candidates, she's very poor, and she is flawed. But my goodness me, the difference between a flawed sane person and a flawed mad person is what this whole election is going to boil down to.
He seemed so concerned, didn't he, in the early part about...
He can't resist it. It's like it's so easy to wind up, and that is a genuine security concern, unless...
Blackham, when he talked about, he was concerned about the young black African American and Latinos and what's going on. I mean, he just comes across to me, it's just proven to me what he is. I mean, the man is absolutely useless, and...
But if you have been buying the American dream all of your life and it hasn't come true, who are you going to blame? Who are you going to blame? He's giving you someone to blame. You can blame the liberals. You can blame them. You can blame them. It's all their fault. All those people who told us that unions were important, it's all their fault that we haven't got any trade unions anymore. America's in some sectors better off than we are on that front. But the simple, both sides of the Atlantic, the simple message that we've now been swallowing for 20 or 30 years is let businesses do whatever they want and take away workers' rights to resist. Whether you're a junior doctor in Britain or whether you're a Teamster in America. That's what they've done. And when Trump talks about Ronald Reagan, look at the graph of where the 99% of the population, how their incomes were affected during various presidencies. These are guys who always give money to the people who started the term with the most. But the American dream somehow sells you the idea that you'll get a piece of that pie. And when you don't get a piece of that pie, what are you going to do? Accuse Mexicans of stealing it. Where are we going next? David, two Liverpool callers. Who have I spoken to? David or Tony? Tony's in Liverpool, like David. There you go. What would you like to say, Tony?
Good morning to you, James. Thanks for taking the call. I think basically you could look. I watched it myself. I must admit I didn't plan to, but I ended up watching it, and I thought it was pretty woeful, really, both sides. I think basically if you watch the three debates, I don't think the numbers will change at all off the back of them. In fact, you could probably, turn
the proper polls, the ones where they ask a random sample, they've delivered a landslide to Hillary Clinton. But I think you're probably right in terms of effect. But what you've got, of course, to reiterate this point about Trump fans, is they've all gone on to the polls that you click yourself. Like we had on the LBC website during the election, and you'd get 94% of people think UKIP will be forming the next government, and then they sort of tweet them all to each other as if that's actually a poll. But in terms of changing votes, that 8% of undecided could only have swung one way last night.
I think, James, essentially what it will come down to is on the day itself, polling day. I think what will happen, there's a worry for Clinton that Bernie Sanders voters will not vote for her because they dislike her, Clinton, obviously, as much as they dislike Trump, and that will be a worry. If they go for Jill Stein, the Green Party, a third candidate, that's going to be a big, big worry. The Republicans will definitely get their vote out because they know it's last chance saloon. They have to, and I'm sure they will.
But you've got both Bushes now. Every living former president has come out and said don't vote for him.
Exactly. I've seen that. I get that. I understand that. But I think the fact that the numbers are still so tight now suggests that Trump could possibly be ahead. He could, as we speak now, he could genuinely be possibly ahead.
I agree. I agree, but I get it now. Do you get it? Are you still mystified by it? I've been mystified by it all year. I finally understand it.
It's basically, he's a showman, and I think basically he knows. I think what the people have made a mistake. They talked him down, so it set the bar low. What they should have done is talked him up. And obviously the bar would have been raised in this first debate. So he's probably gone into that thinking, that wasn't so bad, was it? I've come out of that quite well. So he's probably now thinking...
Well, no, he must on some level, even in his world of delusion, he must on some level know that it didn't go well because he's claiming that the microphone was defective.
Yeah,
he's such a child, isn't he? He's like a child accused of stealing cookies and denying it as the crumbs drip down his chin.
Well, I think now, James, what we're going to see in the next debate, you'll probably see him go more in depth onto the email situation. I think because obviously, she backed off there. She hasn't really got much to say.
She didn't back off. She was hands up. I did wrong. If I could have my time again, I'd do it differently. But not paying income tax compared to having an internet server that you shouldn't have been using, or the man's on charge. He's on charges. There's a possibility he'll be facing trial for the rape of a 13-year-old aspiring model in October, and that somehow email servers are supposed to be powerful weapons to prove how Hillary Clinton is untrustworthy.
I think it's open sore now, James.
It may be, but there's no. Again, it's just another excuse, though. There's nobody in America cares about these emails. It's just somehow someone's told them this will hurt her, so they keep mentioning it. Your average voter doesn't even understand that issue. It's just another way to say you've been punching yourself in the face for 30 years, but I'm going to pretend it was people like Hillary Clinton that were punching you rather than you. 10:45 is the time. Donna's in Wimbledon. She's quite poorly, she tells us, and has to take morphine at the moment. Last night I had checked my medicines after watching 15 minutes of that debate, as I thought I'd accidentally taken too much morphine. Paul Murphy is in Belfast. This show is absolutely magic, James, and I'm lapping it up. So happy that not everyone is not that mad. And some other kind words. That modesty prevents me from reading. Let me find a box of trolls or basket of deplorables. Why don't you stick to a soapbox at Speaker's Corner on a Sunday? To get paid for this rubbish, rude and patronising dribble we have to listen to is astonishing. Seriously, call it a day. You're really not great, mate, promise. If you send me a picture of your radio, I will explain to you how you retune it, if you feel that you're somehow being compulsorily forced to listen to this. But there's nothing you can do to upset the basket of deplorables or the box of trolls more than just hold up that mirror. My God, do they hate you when you hold up that mirror. And what does Donald Trump do? He steps between them and the mirror. He makes them feel better about the ugliest parts of themselves. That's the nasty lot. That's about 14 to 15% of any given population, where fascism always begins. The rest are victims of fraud, victims of being lied to, victims of the worst kind of confidence trick imaginable. Hillary Clinton, impossible to warm to, impossible to feel much passion or support for Hillary Clinton. At best, there's a sort of cool ambivalence. Trump does both, you see. He will excite enormous enthusiasm, and he will frighten the life out of people. The people who feel enormous enthusiasm for him are the ones who desperately need to avoid that mirror, to avoid that conclusion that their life is somehow their fault. What are you upset about? I'm not getting paid enough. Where do you stand on things like national living wages? No, that's all lefty nonsense. How do you feel about your own wages? I'm not getting paid enough. How do you feel about minimum wage? Oh, lefty nonsense. How do you feel at work at the moment? Oh, it's awful. I'm frightened I'm going to lose my job. They're going to ship it out to China, or they're going to do this, they're going to do... How do you feel about trade union membership or going on strike? No, lefty nonsense. So... hang on a minute, how are you going to get your wages up or protect yourself at work while simultaneously believing that collective bargaining and minimum wage legislation is somehow lefty nonsense? I blame Mexicans. I blame Barack Obama, because he's not even American. It's just great. It's just fascism, really. 2.0. Maria is in Hampstead. Maria, what would you like to say?
I still don't know who I'll vote for.
Don't vote for the mad person is generally a good rule of thumb.
I think they're both so corrupt. I don't know what I would do. The only reason
vote for the one that published her tax returns, then, if you're going to talk about corruption.
Well, the thing is, I think she's untouchable. She's kind of proven to be a little above the law, and I think the only reason why I would ever even say possibly vote for him would be because there will be, I think, a bit more checks and balances in the government.
What?
Whereas with her, I don't know.
Checks and balances in the... Let's just play another random clip and you can translate it for me as an American, because I don't speak this language.
I have much better judgment than she does. There's no question about that. I also have a much better temperament than she has. I have a winning temperament. I know how to win. She does not have how to win.
Clinton.
Wait.
His cavalier attitude about nuclear weapons is so deep.
I understand what she's saying. I know what those words mean.
Yeah.
What did he say there, Maria? He's got a winning temperament. What?
Yeah. I think he's just,
let's just do it again. You're thinking of voting for this man.
No.
Yes, you just said you were. I did play it again. You need to hear this again, Maria. No, this is important. I'm doing a public service here. This is stop talking. Listen.
I have much better judgment than she does. There's no question about that. I also have a much better temperament than she has. I have a winning temperament.
Do all Americans say temperament like that?
Oh, no.
He has a much better temperament than she has.
Nobody talks like him. He is
Say that again.
in his own world. No, but what I'm saying is that he will be, people will go against him in the government. So it's almost like we'll have a lame duck government, but I don't know where she'll take the government either. You know what I mean?
Well, you could probably look at the last sort of 8 years of Democratic government where the economy has come out faster than almost any other economy in the developed world. Things have gone wrong, but you have a known quantity. Where does the idea come from? Because this intrigues me, and this is in no way intended to be a criticism of you. Where does the idea come from that America isn't great anymore? This sense, what would you point to as the things that people in these constituencies feel that they've somehow had taken from them?
I have to say, I think it just must be what you were saying earlier, how so many people they feel like their American dream, so-called, has been taken away from them probably because they are, most of the time, still pretty prejudiced and things like that. So I think he's just playing up on everyone's fear. He's just a fear monger. It's really, I promise you, I'm not going to be voting for him. I'm not saying I'm voting for him.
Why not? He's got a winning temperament.
No, he really doesn't.
His judgment is probably one of his greatest attributes by far. Let me tell you, the guy's amazing.
I will not vote for him, but I have a really hard time voting for her.
I get that. I completely get that. From where I'm sitting, keeping him away from to be fair, if he'd been born poor, I honestly think he'd be carting his belongings up and down Fifth Avenue in a shopping trolley, telling everyone that he is Ozymandias. I am huge and I contain multitudes. He'd have been taken to hospital years ago if he hadn't been born rich. But of course he doesn't think he was born rich. He thinks he's created his own fortune, despite the fact that if he'd simply invested what his father left him in the post office, he'd be richer now than he actually is after doing all those huge deals with his amazing temperament. Maria, take care. Thank you. Last word to Tony. Well, it might not be the last word. There's room for you as well. 0345 6060 973. Tony's in Woodford. Tony, what's going on?
Hi, James. Yeah, I stayed up and watched it, and I really feel that it's neck and neck at the moment because Trump is playing to the insecurities of the American people. He's full of sound bites.
So here's one. Here's a great soundbite. This is from his book. You tell people a lie 3 times, they will believe anything. You tell people what they want to hear, play to their fantasies, and then you close the deal. He even admits it himself. I mean, that is like saying to his own supporters, ha ha ha, you mugs, you massive mugs. He's written a book calling them mugs, but they're still voting for him. It's beautiful.
Yeah, but it's like the Corbyn factor here. I mean, Hillary was polished in places last night, really, really good. And if she carries on like that, she'll get to the White House. But I'm just thinking now it's going to get very, very personal because he did indicate that, Trump. He said, I want to say something about your family, but I'm not going to. But I'm thinking he's going to, and it's going to get very, very personal. And, what he says is appealing to a lot of the American public. Let's make America great again. And, words like that.
Have you seen what happens have you seen what happens when the reporters ask people when America was last great?
Yeah, but it doesn't matter, does it? People are believing him, and they're not believing so much in Hillary, are they? Because, there's something about Hillary it's not quite right to the American people.
She's the second most unpopular candidate in the history of American presidential elections. And then there's every chance she might overtake Donald Trump and become the least popular, I grant you. But it's the difference between facts and gibberish. And I guess gibberish is very, very seductive if you desperately need to avoid the conclusion that you have voted to reduce your own quality of life for decades. And if you're a Republican, then arguably you have. Republicans started these wars. It was George Bush who took them into Iraq. Donald Trump's trying to tell Republicans it was Hillary Clinton's fault. It's actually... It's borderline beautiful. It's that thin line between genius and madness. He just looks a little bit like genius occasionally, despite the fact that anybody with 2 eyes in their head can see that it's basically madness. And if it does get personal, I don't know, will that hurt her even more? It seems to me he's gone about as low as it's possible to go already. What we're going to talk about in the next hour is the Archbishop of Canterbury's comments regarding anti-Semitism, why the church is to blame. And I like this story because it approaches some fairly well-trodden territory from, for me at least, quite an original position. It also tallies with the racism we've been discussing in the last hour, because anti-Semitism is at the heart of racism, according to the Most Reverend Justin Welby. And it's the interplay between Christianity and Judaism that I'm intrigued by most. I don't really recognize this, but I'm a lot younger than the Archbishop, and it may be that the Christianity I grew up with didn't focus upon some of the things that it did when he was growing up. We shall find out, and I'm going to need your help on that. But let's close, shall we, with a little bit? Should we do one more? Have you got a favourite from these? Can we do the one about his son? This is how the world will be rendered safer by President Trump.
When you look at what ISIS is doing with the internet, they're beating us at our own game. ISIS. So we have to get very, very tough on cyber and cyber warfare. It is a huge problem. I have a son. He's 10 years old. He has computers. He is so good with these computers. It's unbelievable. The security aspect of cyber is very, very tough, and maybe it's hardly doable.
And there you have it. And of course, it will not have shifted many votes. 8% undecided. Nobody who liked Trump before that debate has watched that and concluded he's a absolute giblet. Why? Because it's a hell of a lot easier to fool people than it is to persuade them that they've been fooled. And he could still easily win. Easily. Still will, if there are a few sort of planets aligning in place. But at least we finally understand why.